Last week, we started to talk about this idea of wondering, and we said that when it comes to science and faith, there is a lot for us to wonder about. And all of what wondering can sometimes create a pretty uncomfortable, uneasy, or just confusing feeling. In other words, our wonder can create tension. There are actually a couple of different tensions we feel. Basically, for a lot of us, the tension really comes down to this. There is a lot we wonder about in science and faith, and sometimes it feels more like a tug of war between the two. For some of us who have grown up in church, some of the questions asked in science classes seems to clash with what we're taught at church. Or if we're new to church, there's a chance that what we've been learning at church doesn't line up with what we've been taught from our science teacher. So where do we go with our questions? What can be trusted? Who can be trusted? If we end up questioning one thing about science or faith, does that mean that we throw everything we think about those things out the window? Maybe, most of all, we wonder, do I have to shut down my brain in order to believe in God? And do I have to shut down my faith to believe in science? These questions aren't new. Throughout history, people have questioned how God, the Bible, and science all work together. Let's break something down. One of the first Christian leaders, Paul, wrote about this very idea. After his life was transformed by an encounter with God, Paul went from wanting to stop Christianity from spreading to encouraging and inviting people to become Jesus followers. The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. Paul is saying that Jesus was there at the start of creation. Christians believe that Jesus is actually God in human form. In Jesus, the whole world was created. Not only that, he's the one holding all of it together today. I'm not sure how that works exactly, but what Paul is saying is Jesus was there at the start. So when we put our confidence and trust in Jesus, in the who, we are trusting him for the details of creation from the beginning of time that we may never know. This isn't about God versus science. God made science. We don't have to decide whether to put our confidence in a scientific theory or something the Bible says. We put our confidence in who is behind all of it. God is in it. God is bigger than it. So our faith is not built on being able to prove theories about God creating the universe or whether traditional understanding of specific events is completely accurate. Instead, our faith is built on a person, Jesus, who we believe is the Son of God, who is behind all scientific understanding. When we put our trust in Jesus, who was there at creation and is continuing to hold all of creation together today, we believe that he is at the center of everything. Even if we don't have an explanation for how it works, it means that we can keep searching for answers and exploring science without having to abandon or ignore our faith in Jesus. You can trust someone before you know everything. Many people live by this. In fact, Galileo is one of those people. He was a famous Italian scientist who lived in the 1600s. He famously said, "I do not feel obligated to believe that the same God who has endowed us with senses, reason, and intellect has intended us to forego their use." In other words, God made our brains, and God would want us to use our minds to better understand the world that he created, even if it means rethinking old concepts as we learn more. In fact, when some pretty smart people asked Jesus what the most important commandment was, Jesus replied, "You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment." Did you catch that? Jesus said, with your mind. Our faith is built on a person, Jesus. To put it another way, we don't need to pick a side between God and science because God is bigger than all of that. What challenges our faith doesn't have to destroy it. The tension or discomfort we feel doesn't have to be a disaster for us. You don't have to know everything in order to trust someone. Wondering is okay, and not knowing the answer to something doesn't have to keep us from knowing and trusting someone. In other words, you cannot know and know. You can trust science and trust God. You can rest in the fact that you don't have to know everything in order to trust. In fact, if you don't hear anything else today, I want you to walk away knowing there are two key ideas you should consider as a result of everything that we're talking about. The first is you should ask questions, and the second is that you can trust Jesus. What if everything that we've talked about today has the potential to change the way that you think about what it means to be a Christian? Imagine if this could help you build a faith that will last through the questions and the wondering that science raises in your mind.